In regards to the specific case you mentioned, we received assurances, the same assurances that are in the public declaration made in this case, and we are satisfied with that.
That was Justin Trudeau in Vietnam on Wednesday, defending his association with Stephen Bronfman, a major Liberal Party fundraiser. The guy, actually. Bronfman was named in the Paradise Papers as having ties to an offshore trust worth millions in the Cayman Islands. First, Bill Morneau, now Stephen Bronfman. Trudeau's been spending a lot of time lately defending multimillionaires. At issue is here to talk about that and more for the first time in a long while. They're really here at the table in Toronto, and I get to join them, which is a thrill. Andrew, Chantal, and joining us for the first time tonight, initiating it with me, Josh Wingrove of Bloomberg. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Rosie.
And welcome to the nice big studio.
Yeah, it's nice.
Andrew, let's start with you. Do you think that this is something that affects the Liberal Party writ large? Do you think it affects Justin Trudeau's branding?
A bit of both, and it's compounding on top of a bunch of other things, on top of Bill Morneau's troubles, on top of the broader issue of numbered companies, on top of the Cash for Access fundraisers with the Chinese billionaires, on top of the Christmas with the Aga Khan. This whole thing is so toxic for them because if you go back to Justin Trudeau's original premise, that whole "we're fighting for the middle class" was partly a shield. It was to protect him against the accusation that he was some out-of-touch, entitled little trust fund kid. And if that gets broken down, as I think it has broken down a lot, then he's vulnerable. It's not fair, it's not right, perhaps, it's cheap, but it's the kind of politics that can be damaging.
But you can be rich and still defend the middle class, presumably.
Yes, and others have in the past, so this isn't the first. At some point, you also have to address the substance of the issue. And if there had not been this Morneau fall, this story would not have very much legs. It kind of makes you thankful looking at it, frankly, and Trudeau should be thankful that we have changed the political financing of parties. So that what this mostly illustrates is when big money was in the financing of parties, you could actually blackmail a prime minister into doing things that your friends who were also deep pocket donors wanted. Right. In this day and age, to call Stephen Bronfman the bagman for the Liberal Party is kind of a caricature in the sense that even if he brings all of his friends to one evening to meet Justin Trudeau and give money, they'll all still only give $1,500 that year, and they'll have to do it the next year.
There's no real bag of money anymore.
No. So up to a point, it does illustrate why it was essential to change those rules and how that changed the game rather significantly for people with deep pockets.
So. But what about the issue of tax reform? I mean, that's where this, and you're right, I think you're all right. If there hadn't been the Morneau thing, I'm not sure that this would have picked up as much traction. So have they lost credibility on the issue of trying to reform taxes at all?
Well, I think the question is, in many ways, how does Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, respond, and how does Justin Trudeau, the Liberal leader, respond? I mean, you saw him there. You know, the question is, hey, this is your chief fundraiser. What are you going to do about it? And the answer is nothing. And I think Chantal has illustrated some of the reasons why. A lot of the people caught up in this, Wilbur Ross comes to mind, the U.S. Commerce Secretary, I think have a lot more pressing questions in front of them now than Stephen Bronfman does. A lot of the revelations in Canada were more jaw-dropping for the Colbert angle. You know, politicians, frankly, who've sort of come and gone from the Ottawa scene. So the question is, what does Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, do? And as I think we've seen from the last 4 months, this government doesn't have the stomach for another tax fight. And so they're committing money to the CRA, even though some of their own senators, Percy Downs, says it's sort of a ruse to go after tax cheats, go after offshore. But beyond that, I don't think we're going to see them take a lot of action.
But that's the thing, is it feeds into this narrative, if you will, that you're going after the doctors and the lawyers and the farmers, but meanwhile you're leaving the offshore trusts.
Except you're not going anymore after you've given a gift to the doctors and the lawyers and the farmers.
But if you're talking about sort of the political judgment involved, it is remarkable, I would say, that they set off on this track back in July, and it doesn't seem to have occurred to anybody when they were going after these private corporations. Say, do you think anyone will mention our own private corporations? Yeah. Again, it's ad hominem, but if you're asking to be congratulated for your commitment to fairness and justice, it does great on people.
This is a government also that taxes income. They don't tax wealth. They back down from taxing the capital gains stuff.
That's right.
They have not moved, or sorry, I should say the stock option stuff. They haven't moved on capital gains. You know, there's a good argument to me. I think the reason why there's gives traction to the doctors and lawyers is that this is a government going after more of the upper middle class than the truly rich.
That sort of leads me to the next part of what I want to talk about, and that is, if you go back to the way the tax reform thing was announced back in the summer, and then the way it all unfolded, there are people now inside the government who are saying, are we making these mistakes because we are so focused on Donald Trump and NAFTA? So it's 1 year since the election, it's 1 year since they put that war room in place, they're spending a lot of effort and energy and resources doing that. Are they doing that to the detriment of other things, Chantal?
Of course they are. In the same way that the Quebec referendum changed the rest of Jean Chrétien's first mandate, it was not their plan to suddenly have to deploy all their resources on the unity front, and a lot of other things fell by the wayside. And the night of the American election, Justin Trudeau's agenda was hijacked. Things that were not even in the pile became to-do things at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing process. It's not a crisis you can resolve and then you can move on. This is going to be overshadowing the rest of the mandate. And it's the #1 file, but while the political energy is focused on that, and a lot of people think that they've done well so far on that file, it's a centralized government, no less centralized than all the previous ones, a lot of other things, and a rookie government with rookie ministers, including at finance, so who can't take care of themselves without supervision.
And it's a government, if I may say, with some people at the top who are very pleased with themselves. I think that's true in any political party, perhaps, but I think a lot of people would say there's a certain overconfidence. They had a great run for the first couple of years, and without taking away from the point, yes, Donald Trump was this huge distraction, but I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I'm not sure we could lay this problem of how they pitched the tax reform to that. I think it's more they just didn't see it coming, and they maybe were just a little too overconfident about it.
And flat-footed, they didn't respond quickly when it started brewing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying the president is the reason for their mistakes, certainly, but would it help if they were able to sort of not spend so much time on that, given that we don't really have evidence, and you and I were talking about this, that it's paying off? Would it be better if they sort of refocused domestically, I guess?
Well, I think that they have a bandwidth issue. They haven't been particularly good at passing legislation. They haven't been particularly good at managing the House broadly. But, Trump is hanging over them whether they like it or not. I'm not sure sort of rehashing and relitigating it is going to get them anywhere. I think that they are going to find themselves, and we saw this in the last round in D.C., even, in this for months and months and months.
Last round of negotiations for NAFTA.
And ultimately, this is how you judge governments, is how do they react to events they didn't foresee, that weren't in their mandate.
For sure.
Brian Mulroney didn't run on free trade, but when it became clear that he had to do it, he did it. Jean Chrétien ran against, we didn't have to deal with the deficit, but when it was clear he had to, he dealt with it. So that is one of the measures of a government is when this big thing is thrown at you, how well do you scramble, how well do you adjust?
But the lesson from that, to kind of flip this discussion, is that Brian Mulroney had hosts of problems. He was losing ministers. He was having trouble managing files. He was failing to control public spending. But he got re-elected with a majority on free trade because in the end, and that's part of the calculation, you get judged on the bigger things. Yeah. And the question, one of the ballot box questions, is going to be, do you want Justin Trudeau to be sitting across from Donald Trump, or would you rather have Andrew Scheer or Jagmeet Singh? Answer the question, go vote.
Assuming Trump is still there in 2019.
He's outlasted longer than we thought, so last rotation.
It's less than a year.
Yeah, I think that is true. I think the Liberals have put clearly some of their best ministers on this. We're going to be in this for a while, but we go back to the root question of what impact will these Paradise Papers have too, and I think to a certain extent the Trump-Trudeau Paradise Papers are all connected. It's to the extent that they get to a straw that breaks the camel's back and Liberals are seen as, insular, arrogant, disconnected from the average Canadian. And I think all these files have a risk to blow up for them, as always. What will be the straw that broke the camel's back? This camel already has, I don't know, Aga Khan and Bill Morneau riding on the back of it.
As Brian Mulroney once said when we asked him, don't you think you're hurting the Charlottetown Accord by being the main salesman? Sadly, he said, Mother Teresa was not available. When we go in the next election, Mother Teresa will not be on the ballot.
This is true.
No, but Justin Trudeau will, and his brand continues to hold, in spite of all these things. Okay, Andrew, Chantal, Josh, that was fun. Let's do it again. Thank you.